journey back to the 70s and 80s. We explore the monumental legends who defined rock and pop, alongside the brilliant bands that faded from memory or never got their spotlight. Rediscover iconic anthems, unforgettable artists, and the hidden gems that shaped two incredible decades of music. Get ready to listen. Lynyrd Skynyrd. Their debut album, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, 1973, featuring Freebird and Simple Man, established Lynyrd Skynyrd as Southern rock icons with their fiery triple guitar attack. Their music celebrated Southern culture and working-class spirit, often with a rebellious edge and a reputation for intense, sometimes confrontational, live performances. Their feud/friendship with Neil Young, sparked by his songs Southern Man and Alabama, and their response Sweet Home Alabama, became legendary. Successful albums like Second Helping solidified their status. Tragedy struck on October 20th, 1977, when their chartered plane crashed, killing Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, Cassie Gaines, and others, just days after releasing the prophetic Street Survivors album, whose original cover depicted the band engulfed in flames. Freebird, with its extended guitar solo finale, became the archetypal concert encore request, often shouted ironically at unrelated shows. King Crimson. King Crimson symbolized innovation in progressive rock, blending jazz, classical, and experimental elements often within single compositions, characterized by complex time signatures and instrumental virtuosity. Their debut album, In the Court of the Crimson King, 1969, featuring 21st century schizoid man and iconic Mellotron sounds, was a milestone. However, creative intensity also caused internal friction, leading to the departure of key members like Ian MacDonald and Greg Lake. Led by Robert Fripp, the band constantly changed lineups and explored new sounds, often undergoing radical shifts even between tracks on the same album. Robert Fripp's unique guitar technique, Frippertronics, using tape loops, became a signature element in later iterations and solo work. This constant flux created pressure and led to their initial disbandment in 1974. The lineup that produced Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Starless and Bible Black, and Red, with John Wetton and Bill Bruford, is often cited as another peak of their creativity and heaviness. Fripp often described King Crimson not as a fixed band, but as a way of doing things, emphasizing the conceptual approach over specific personnel. Television. Their debut album, Marquee Moon, 1977, is considered one of the greatest rock albums, notable for its intricate, weaving dual guitar interplay between Tom Verlaine and Richard Lloyd, often eschewing traditional riffs for complex melodic lines. Featuring the epic title track, it showcased exceptional musicianship rooted in the influential CBGB scene in New York. Tom Verlaine's poetic, often oblique lyrics added another layer of mystery and intellectualism to their sound. Despite critical acclaim, commercial success was limited. Internal tensions, especially between Verlaine and original bassist Richard Hell, who left in 1975, caused instability. Their second album, Adventure, 1978, was more successful in the UK but less acclaimed. Television disbanded in 1978. Their influence can be heard not just in rock, but also in the extended instrumental explorations of some later jam bands. Joy Division. Formed in 1976, Joy Division gained attention with their unique, atmospheric sound, exploring alienation and isolation through Ian Curtis's deep, emotive vocals, often reflecting the bleak post-industrial landscape of Manchester. Their debut album, Unknown Pleasures, 1979, featuring Martin Hannett's groundbreaking production, became a post-punk classic with tracks like She's Lost Control. Tragedy struck when Ian Curtis, who suffered from epilepsy and depression, committed suicide in 1980, his distinctive, erratic dancing becoming an iconic part of his stage presence. The stark, minimalist aesthetic extended to their influential record sleeves, designed by Peter Saville for Factory Records. Ironically, his death propelled the band's fame. Their final album, Closer, and songs like Love Will Tear Us Apart cemented their status, paving the way for New Order. Despite their short career, their sound profoundly influenced goth rock, post-punk, and alternative music for decades. The band's name itself was derived from the term for sexual slavery wings in Nazi concentration camps described in the novel The House of Dolls, reflecting their dark thematic preoccupations. Fleetwood Mac. Starting in London in 1967 as a respected blues rock band led by Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac had early success with the instrumental hit Albatross. Green's troubled departure in 1970 led to an unstable period with multiple guitarists. In the mid-70s, the band relocated to the U.S. and recruited Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. This addition created the classic lineup and revitalized the band with a more pop-oriented sound, anchored by the remarkably resilient rhythm section of Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, the only constant members throughout their history. The pre-Buckingham Nicks era, often called the Bob Welch era, also produced successful albums like Heroes Are Hard to Find, showcasing a different, more AOR/rock sound. The album Fleetwood Mac, 1975, was a huge success. The album Rumors, 1977, recorded amidst intense romantic conflicts, became one of the best-selling albums ever. The intense interpersonal drama documented in Rumors, two couples breaking up, affairs, became as famous as the music itself, fueling public fascination. Christine McVie, née Perfect, already an established blues musician, joined officially after marrying John McVie and became a crucial songwriter and vocalist well before the arrival of Buckingham and Nicks, penning hits like Say You Love Me. The Jam. Led by Paul Weller, The Jam was a force in UK punk rock and the mod revival, drawing heavily on the sharp style and energy of 60s bands like The Who, with Weller's sharp suits becoming as iconic as the music. Their debut album, In the City, 1977, had raw punk energy. Later albums like All Mod Cons showed musical growth and sharp social commentary reflecting Thatcher-era Britain. Bassist Bruce Foxton and drummer Rick Buckler provided a powerful, driving rhythm section essential to the band's energetic sound. They achieved massive success in the UK with 4 consecutive #1 albums, but didn't replicate that internationally. In 1982, at their absolute peak, Weller disbanded the group to explore new soul-influenced musical directions with the Style Council. Weller's decision to break up the band at their commercial zenith remains one of the most discussed and debated moves in British rock history. The Runaways. Led by Joan Jett and Lita Ford, and initially managed by the controversial Kim Foley, this Los Angeles band gained fame for their raw energy and defiant attitude through songs like Cherry Bomb. Their blend of hard rock, punk, and glam resonated, especially in Japan, where they experienced Beatlemania levels of fandom. Their legacy includes 4 studio albums, with songs like Hollywood and Queens of Noise becoming cult classics. However, creative differences between Jett, punk/glam, and Ford, hard rock/metal, plus the pressures of fame and alleged mismanagement, led to tension. Bassist Jackie Fox's later allegations of sexual assault against Foley brought renewed attention to the band's difficult experiences. Their final show in late 1978 marked the end, but they decisively broke down barriers for women in hard rock. Their raw, rebellious image and sound directly paved the way for numerous female punk and rock artists that followed in the late 70s and 80s. The divergent and highly successful solo careers of Joan Jett, as Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, and Lita Ford further highlighted their contrasting musical paths after the band split. The Modern Lovers. Hailing from Boston, Jonathan Richman's band was influenced by the Velvet Underground's raw sound, but possessed a unique, almost naive charm and minimalist approach. Their direct music often focused on everyday life, with Richman's distinct, conversational, and often childlike lyrical perspective, Roadrunner, Pablo Picasso. Drummer David Robinson later achieved massive success as a founding member of the Cars. Despite a loyal local following and recording influential demos produced by John Cale in 1972, they struggled for mainstream success. The band broke up due to internal tensions and Richman's changing artistic direction in 1974 before their debut album was finally released, 1976. Richman continued with various lineups under the Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers name, exploring increasingly stripped-down, often acoustic and whimsical styles completely removed from the proto-punk origins. Thin Lizzy. Fronted by the charismatic poet-slash-bassist Phil Lynott, this Irish band carved a unique niche with its signature twin-lead guitar harmonies and blend of hard rock, blues, and Celtic folk storytelling, evident in Lynott's often narrative lyrical style. Albums like Jailbreak, 1976, and the electrifying Live and Dangerous, 1978, widely regarded as one of the best live albums ever, along with hits The Boys Are Back in Town and Whiskey in the Jar, are classics. Their twin guitar harmony sound, particularly perfected by Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson, became hugely influential on later hard rock and metal bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. However, constant lineup changes around the core of Lynott and drummer Brian Downey, plus Lynott's battle with addiction, plagued the band. They disbanded in 1983. As one of the few prominent black frontmen in hard rock during the 70s, Phil Lynott broke significant racial barriers. Wild Cherry. Formed by Rob Parisi in 1970, Wild Cherry initially played hard rock, building a regional following in the Ohio area. A request to play some funky music from a black audience during a specific gig inspired Parisi to play that funky music. The song, blending funk, rock, and pop, became a massive #1 hit, went platinum, and achieved huge crossover appeal, dominating both pop and R&B radio. However, the band couldn't escape the one-hit wonder label, struggling to find a follow-up that resonated similarly. The song's title itself became a cultural catchphrase, often used humorously in situations involving unexpected shifts in musical style. Subsequent singles failed, and they disbanded in 1979. Despite being labeled a one-hit wonder, the band did release several albums trying to recapture the magic, exploring more rock and AOR directions. Play That Funky Music earned the band a Grammy nomination for Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocals. The Sweet. Starting as The Sweet Shop, the band became major players in UK glam rock, known for their high, layered vocal harmonies and catchy hooks, transitioning from bubblegum pop to hard rock. Early hits like Funny Funny, written by Chin and Chapman, brought success but also an image they grew to resent. Their breakthrough came with Blockbuster, 1973, showcasing a heavier sound. Their visual image, featuring glitter, platform boots, and makeup, was a key part of the glam rock movement, influencing many bands. Other hits like Ballroom Blitz and Fox on the Run followed, but the band increasingly desired creative control, penning heavier B-sides and album tracks. Tensions with songwriters, vocalist Brian Connolly's personal issues, and changing trends led to decline and disbandment in 1981. Despite their pop hits, albums like Desolation Boulevard and Sweet Fanny Adams showcased a much harder rock edge appreciated by metal fans. Badfinger. Badfinger was once hailed as successors to the Beatles, even having Paul McCartney write their first hit, Come and Get It. Signed in 1968, hits like No Matter What and Baby Blue quickly found success. However, tragedy struck with Pete Ham's suicide in 1975 due to financial and managerial issues, specifically related to their notoriously corrupt manager, Stan Polly. Members Tom Evans and Mike Gibbons also died prematurely later. Their music blended catchy pop and powerful rock, power pop, showcased on albums No Dice and the George Harrison-produced Straight Up. Their song Without You became a massive worldwide hit for Harry Nilsson and later Mariah Carey, though they received little financial reward. The connection with the Beatles' Apple Records brought pros and cons, leading to contract issues despite continued creativity on Wish You Were Here, 1974. The album Straight Up was partially produced by George Harrison and then finished by Todd Rundgren, highlighting their connections and the turmoil at Apple. Despite the tragedies, their hook-laden guitar sound became a key touchstone for the burgeoning power pop genre. The Sex Pistols. The quintessential UK punk rock band, the Sex Pistols, featuring Johnny Rotten snare, Steve Jones's powerful guitar riffs, Paul Cook's drumming, and Sid Vicious' image, created a cultural earthquake orchestrated partly by manager Malcolm McLaren. Their music attacked the status quo, monarchy, and music industry with profane lyrics. Anarchy in the UK, God Save the Queen. Guitarist Steve Jones created a signature wall of sound by layering multiple guitar tracks, often using stolen equipment in the early days. A controversial TV appearance in their Soul studio album, Nevermind the Bollocks, 1977, cemented their notoriety. However, drug abuse, clashes, and manipulation led to their implosion after a disastrous U.S. tour in 1978, capping a brief but impactful 2.5-year career. Sid Vicious, despite limited musical ability on bass, became the visual icon of punk nihilism, culminating in his tragic death in 1979. Montrose. The original lineup featured Sammy Hagar, vocals, Ronnie Montrose, guitar, Bill Church, bass, and Denny Carmassi, drums, creating a blueprint for American hard rock with a raw, powerful sound. Their Ted Templeman-produced self-titled debut album, 1973, with Rock Candy and Bad Motor Scooter, is a hard rock classic. Ronnie Montrose was already a respected session guitarist before forming the band, having played on landmark albums by Van Morrison and Herbie Hancock. Early success was quickly overshadowed by internal tensions between Hagar and Montrose over creative control, leading to Hagar's departure. He went on to massive solo and Van Halen success. The band continued with other singers but failed to recapture the magic, becoming a key influence despite their brief peak. The raw, stripped-down production of their debut album was influential, contrasting with the more elaborate rock productions becoming common at the time. They disbanded in 1977. Derek and the Dominoes. Formed out of Delaney and Bonnie and friends, this short-lived supergroup featured Eric Clapton, Bobby Whitlock, Carl Rattle, and Jim Gordon, aiming for a more anonymous, band-oriented feel. Their masterpiece, Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, 1970, featuring the classic title track Layla and Duane Allman's searing slide guitar, captured a raw, desperate emotional intensity fueled by Clapton's unrequited love for Pattie Boyd. Bobby Whitlock co-wrote many of the album songs with Clapton, making his contribution crucial yet often overlooked. However, Clapton's heroin addiction, Allman's tragic death shortly after recording, and internal conflicts, including drummer Jim Gordon's later diagnosed schizophrenia, led to the band's swift disbandment during sessions for a second album in 1971. The album initially received a lukewarm reception and only gained widespread recognition after the Layla single was re-released later. Sparks. Brothers Ron, keyboards, deadpan stare, Hitler mustache, and Russell Mael, vocals, hyperactive stage presence, soaring falsetto, crafted a unique, genre-bending sound mixing art pop, glam rock, and new wave, always delivered with theatricality and sharp wit. Characterized by Russell's dramatic vocals and Ron's witty, often surreal lyrics, they were always ahead of their time, demonstrating a remarkable ability to reinvent their sound across decades. They collaborated with legendary disco producer Giorgio Moroder in the late 70s for the influential album No. 1 in Heaven, marking a major shift to electronic music. The album Kimono My House, 1974, with This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us was their European breakthrough. While never massive global superstars, they've maintained a long, critically acclaimed career. Their enduring career and consistent artistic vision have earned them immense respect from fellow musicians and a dedicated multi-generational fan base. Big Star. Formed in Memphis in the early 70s, Big Star stood out with catchy melodies, jangly guitars, and Alex Chilton's poignant, often melancholic lyrics, creating a sound often described as bittersweet power pop. Their debut album, One Record, 1972, included classics like In the Street, later the theme for That 70s Show, and 13. Despite critical acclaim, distribution issues and lack of label support severely hampered commercial success, even for their second album, Radio City, 1974. The creative tension between the more pop-oriented Chris Bell, who left after the first album, and the increasingly experimental Alex Chilton defined their early dynamic. Internal tensions and frustration led to their breakup after the fractured recording of their notoriously dark third album, Third/Sister Lovers. Their lack of contemporary success despite clear talent made them the archetypal, critically acclaimed, commercially ignored band, fueling their cult status. Alex Chilton already had major pop success as a teenager singing lead on the Box Tops' massive hit The Letter, adding another layer of irony to Big Star's struggles. Budgie. Budgie's sound was a potent mix of hard rock, blues, and progressive elements, influencing many later metal bands like Iron Maiden and Soundgarden, despite limited chart success. Showcased across 7 albums in the 70s, tracks like Bread Fan, later covered by Metallica, and Crash Course in Brain Surgery were highlights. The core was a power trio: Burke Shelley's distinctive high vocals/bass, Tony Borges' blues-influenced guitar, and Ray Phillips' dynamic drumming. They're often quirky or unusual song titles, e.g., Nude Disintegrating Parachutist Woman, added to their unique identity. Burke Shelley's high-pitched vocals were quite distinct for the heavy rock scene of the time, setting them apart from bluesier shouters. They continued until 2010, when Shelley's health forced disbandment. Although primarily a trio, they occasionally experimented with keyboards, adding another layer to their sometimes complex arrangements found on albums like Squawk. Hailing from Cardiff, Wales, their distinct identity set them apart from the dominant English heavy rock bands of the era. The project of Robin Scott, is primarily remembered for the global synth-pop hit Pop Music, 1979, a song born from experimenting with synthesizers and drum machines, showcasing early use of sequencing. The track captured the late 70s zeitgeist with its electronic sounds, catchy melody, and unique spoken-word chorus listing global cities. The song's distinctive sound was partly achieved by recording different sections at varying speeds and pitches, adding to its quirky feel. Pop Music topped charts worldwide, paving the way for the 80s synth-pop boom. However, couldn't sustain that success, quickly fading despite subsequent interesting electronic explorations. Robin Scott had a background in the art and folk scenes before embracing electronics, bringing a conceptual approach to The song itself remains instantly recognizable. T-Rex. Mark Bolan, a flamboyant fashion and music icon, led T-Rex, evolved from the earlier psychedelic folk Tyrannosaurus Rex, to massive fame in the UK's early 70s glam rock scene, sparking a phenomenon dubbed T-Rextasy, comparable to Beatlemania. His simplified, catchy booger rock riffs and often nonsensical, mystical lyrics on hits like Ride a White Swan, Hot Love, Get On, Bang a Gong, and the album Electric Warrior, 1971, defined the sound. Bolan's lyrics often featured fantastical imagery, elves, cars, and cosmic themes, creating a unique, almost childlike yet glamorous mythology. Success in the US was more limited. As glam faded, Bolan struggled to maintain momentum. His tragic death in a 1977 car crash ended T-Rex abruptly. He consciously simplified his sound from the earlier complex folk to create instantly catchy, danceable rock and roll singles perfect for the pop charts. Sha Na Na. Known for reviving 50s doo-wop and rock and roll with theatrical flair, Sha Na Na gained massive exposure performing surprisingly early on the bill at Woodstock in 1969, a stark contrast to the psychedelic acts surrounding them. Their energetic set and distinctive greaser look, rooted in their origins as a Glee Club spin-off at Columbia University, brought them national attention. Several members went on to have notable careers outside the band, including actor John Bozer Bauman and later Screen Actors Guild president Alan Miles. They further cemented their place in pop culture through their appearance as Johnny Casino and the Gamblers in the movie Grease, 1978, and their own syndicated TV show, 1977 to 1981. Their act was meticulously choreographed, blending music with comedy skits and intricate dance routines that played up the 50s archetypes. The Carpenters. Siblings Richard and Karen Carpenter began their journey in California. Known for Richard's lush, meticulously crafted arrangements and Karen's flawless pitch and seemingly effortless delivery. Their second album, Close to You, 1970, brought their breakthrough with hits like They Long to Be Close to You, earning 2 Grammys. Karen's distinctive contralto voice was a highlight, though she initially considered herself primarily a drummer and possessed considerable, often overlooked, talent on the instrument. They faced some critical backlash during their peak for being perceived as overly wholesome or square compared to the harder rock acts of the era. Behind the success, Karen battled anorexia nervosa. She passed away in 1983 at age 32, raising awareness about eating disorders. Richard Carpenter meticulously oversaw every aspect of their recordings, creating a signature polished sound that involved complex vocal layering and orchestration. Their initial contract with A&M Records was secured after label co-founder Herb Alpert heard their demo tape and was impressed by their unique sound. The Guess Who. Hailing from Winnipeg, Canada, The Guess Who started as a cover band before developing their own sound with psychedelic rock elements and distinctly Canadian lyrical references, becoming Canada's first international rock stars. Their breakthrough came with These Eyes, 1969. They continued with hits like No Time, Laughing, and Especially American Woman, a U.S. #1 hit in 1970. The lyrics of American Woman were famously improvised by Burton Cummings during a live jam session when he forgot the words to another song. However, frequent lineup changes, departures of key songwriters Randy Bachman, who then formed Bachman Turner Overdrive, and Burton Cummings, affected consistency. By the mid-70s, they lost momentum and disbanded. Their sound evolved considerably, moving from garage rock roots through psychedelia to more straightforward hard rock, and even jazzy influences later on. American Woman generated significant controversy, interpreted by many as anti-American, though the band insisted it was more broadly about societal issues and the dangers of American influence. Blue Oyster Cult. This New York band stood out with an intelligent, often cryptic mix of hard rock, early heavy metal, and psychedelia, frequently collaborating with sci-fi/fantasy writers like Michael Moorcock for lyrics. Best known for The Haunting, Don't Fear, The Reaper, 1976. Their catalog also includes FM radio staples like Godzilla and Burnin' For You. Their band name itself, suggested by manager/producer Sandy Pullman, hinted at hidden meanings and esoteric knowledge, adding to their mystique. Despite consistent albums and a reputation for tight live shows featuring Buck Dharma's guitar prowess and early, pioneering use of lasers, BC is often considered a cult band. Their distinctive sound, intellectual themes, and iconic logo secure their special place in rock history. The cryptic lyrics and heavy sound led some conservative groups in the 80s to accuse them of Satanism, a claim the band always refuted. Mott the Hoople. Led by the gravel-voiced Ian Hunter, this British band embodied rock and roll swagger but was near collapse before fan David Bowie gifted them the song All the Young Dudes, 1972, producing the subsequent album as well. The hit saved their career and became a defining glam rock generational anthem, boosted by their already strong reputation as a powerful live act. Before Bowie's intervention, they were known for chaotic, powerful live shows that often overshadowed their less successful studio recordings. They followed with successes like All the Way from Memphis, blending rock and roll energy with glam flair and Hunter's streetwise lyrics. However, internal tensions, particularly surrounding guitarist Mick Ralphs, who left to form Bad Company, led to Hunter's departure in 1974. Ian Hunter's songwriting often focused on the disillusionment and realities of being a working rock band, adding a layer of grit beneath the glam exterior. 20 legendary bands from the 1970s we want back. The 1970s brought us some truly unforgettable bands. Wondering which ones really define that decade. From cool funk to classic rock anthems, these groups shaped a whole generation. Let's take a look at the bands you really ought to have on your playlist. The Eagles. The Eagles, a truly great American rock band, got together in Los Angeles in 1971. They pretty much owned the 70s music scene with hit after hit, including lots of #1 singles and albums. They snagged 6 Grammys, 5 American Music Awards, and sold over 200 million records globally, 150 million right here in the USA. The original guys were Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Bernie Leadon, and Randy Meisner. Linda Ronstadt actually brought them together for her band and album. Soon after, they struck out on their own with David Geffen's new label, Asylum Records. Boy, did that work out. They're their greatest hits, 197, 1975. Album sold 38 million copies in the US, becoming the best-selling album ever here. That set the stage for Hotel California in 1976, which sold over 26 million in the US and gave us huge hits like New Kid in Town and the title track. Timothy B. Schmidt took over for Randy Meisner in 1977. Their 1979 album, The Long Run, gave us the #1 hit, Heartache Tonight. After splitting in 1980, they got back together in 1994 for Hell Freezes Over. They even released another #1 album, Long Road Out of Eden, in 2007. After Glenn Frey sadly passed away in 2016, his son Deacon Frey and Vince Gill stepped in. Deacon left in 2022, but came back for their final tour in 2023. That same year, founding member Randy Meisner passed away. Still, the Eagles' legacy as one of the best-selling and most important bands ever is rock solid. The Bee Gees. The Bee Gees, the iconic group formed by brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb back in 1958, are pop music royalty. They got famous in the late 60s and early 70s, but really hit superstardom during the disco craze of the mid to late 70s. Their amazing vocal harmonies set them apart. Robin's clear voice was key early on, but Barry's falsetto became their signature sound during the disco years. These brothers weren't just singers. They wrote and produced all their own hits. Plus, they wrote and produced massive hits for other artists too, showing just how influential they were across pop music. This flexibility helped them stay popular through different music trends. People called them the Disco Kings and Britain's first family of harmony. Selling between 120 million and 220 million records globally makes them one of the best-selling groups ever and one of the most successful trios around. In 1997, the Bee Gees rightfully entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The hall noted that only giants like Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and Michael Jackson had outsold them. Their music continues to influence people everywhere. Aerosmith. Talk about American rock royalty. Aerosmith exploded in the 70s with their bluesy, hard rock swagger. Steven Tyler's iconic vocals and Joe Perry's killer guitar riffs gave us classics like Dream On, Sweet Emotion, and Walk This Way. They had that raw energy and rock star attitude that defined the era. While they had later comebacks, their 70s output was pure, gritty rock and roll fuel. That kind of down and dirty rock sound is something you don't hear much anymore, and it's definitely missed. Queen. These British rock legends, fronted by the one and only Freddie Mercury, were simply phenomenal. From the operatic masterpiece Bohemian Rhapsody to stadium shakers like We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, all huge in the 70s, they had an incredible range. Their musicianship, theatrical flair, and Mercury's unbelievable voice created a sound and stage presence that's never been matched. We could always use more of their ambitious, boundary-pushing rock anthems that made you feel like you could take on the world. Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac got its start back in London in 1967, thanks to Peter Green. Pretty soon, Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, Jeremy Spencer, and Danny Kirwan were on board. Christine Perfect, who later married John McVie, joined up in 1970. At first, they were a British blues band and even had a UK #1 hit with Albatross back in '68. But the band really found its groove in 1974 when Mick Fleetwood recruited Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. That shifted them toward the pop rock sound we know so well. Their self-titled 1975 album, Fleetwood Mac, topped the charts here in the States. Then came Rumors in 1977, one album. Hits like Go Your Own Way and Dreams made it massive, and it even won the Grammy for Album of the Year. It's amazing they made such timeless music with all the relationship drama happening behind the scenes. Even though the lineup shuffled around quite a bit, especially later on, Fleetwood Mac kept making music and hitting the road. Selling over 120 million records worldwide puts them among the all-time bestsellers. Plus, they got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame since '79, are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame '98, and even picked up a major Brit Award. Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, a real game-changer rock band from England, formed in London back in 1968. The famous lineup was Robert Plant singing, Jimmy Page on guitar, John Paul Jones handling bass and keyboards, and John Bonham on drums. Their powerful, guitar-heavy sound really helped define hard rock and heavy metal, pulling in influences from blues and folk that gave them wide appeal. These guys changed rock music, focusing more on albums than singles, which helped kickstart album-oriented rock. They also became huge stadium rock stars, playing massive shows worldwide. Their impact on music is still felt today. Led Zeppelin racked up plenty of honors. They entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995 and the UK Music Hall of Fame in 2006. They also picked up an American Music Award, the Polar Music Prize, a Kennedy Center Honor, and a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2005. 4 of their albums are even in the Grammy Hall of Fame. Their album sales were incredible, with 5 diamond albums and tons of platinum and gold records in the US and UK. Back in 2004, Rolling Stone called them the 14th greatest artist ever. UFO. UFO is a British rock band that started back in 1968. Over the years, lots of great musicians have been part of the band, like Vinnie Moore, Pete Way, Michael Schenker, and Paul Raymond. While they never became chart superstars, UFO definitely made their mark on rock and metal. Tracks like Lights Out and Dr. Doctor were important links between early hard rock/heavy metal and the new wave of British heavy metal that came later in the 70s. Their live album Strangers in the Night, 1979, is considered one of the best live albums ever recorded and really cemented their reputation. UFO might not have topped the mainstream charts, but their influence on hard rock and metal is still felt today. You couldn't ignore Kiss in the 70s. With the makeup, the costumes, and the explosive live shows, literally, they were larger than life. But beneath the spectacle was some fantastic hard rock. Anthems like Rock and Roll All Night, Detroit Rock City, and Shout It Out Loud were pure, uncomplicated fun. They brought a sense of showmanship and pure entertainment to rock music that was totally unique. That level of commitment to the show combined with solid rock tunes is something we could use more of today. The Doors. The Doors were a legendary rock band out of Los Angeles, formed in 1965. The group featured the magnetic lead singer Jim Morrison, Ray Manzarek on keyboards, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and John Densmore on drums. They really shook up the music scene in the 60s with Morrison's unique voice, poetic lyrics, and wild stage presence. They got their name from Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception, and signed with Elektra Records in 1966. In just 5 years, they put out 6 studio albums, including their famous debut in Strange Days in the same year. Their mix of rock, blues, and psychedelic sounds made them incredibly popular, selling millions. Tragically, Morrison died in 1971. The band tried to carry on as a trio for a bit, releasing 2 more albums before breaking up in 1973. Later, the surviving members even toured under names like the Doors of the 21st Century, selling over 100 million albums worldwide. The Doors were one of the first American bands to get 8 gold LPs in a row. Their huge influence was recognized in 1993 when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd, easily one of rock's biggest names, started in England in 1965. They first got noticed for their British psychedelic rock sound, really standing out with their long songs, sound experiments, deep lyrics, and amazing live shows. Many folks think they're the greatest progressive rock band ever. The first lineup had Syd Barrett, guitar/vocals, Nick Mason, drums, Roger Waters, bass/vocals, and Richard Wright, keyboard/vocals. Led by Barrett, they had hits like Arnold Lane and See Emily Play, plus a hit debut album, The Piper of the Gates of Dawn. Sadly, Syd Barrett's mental health issues led to him leaving in 1968, and David Gilmour joined on guitar. The band had its share of troubles. Richard Wright left in 1979 due to conflicts but came back later, becoming a full member again in 1994. Roger Waters left in 1985, but Gilmour and Mason carried on, eventually bringing Wright back too. By 2013, Pink Floyd had sold over 250 million records worldwide, making them one of the top-selling acts ever. Albums like The Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall were huge culturally and are in the Grammy Hall of Fame. Along with Wish You Were Here, these albums are massive sellers and true rock classics. Pink Floyd's impact on music is undeniable. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath, started in England in 1968, is pretty much credited with inventing heavy metal. The original guys were Tony Iommi, guitar, Bill Ward, drums, Geezer Butler, bass, and Ozzy Osbourne, vocals. Their dark, heavy sound, often touching on occult themes, completely changed rock music and created the blueprint for heavy metal. Before becoming Black Sabbath in 1969, they went by names like the Polka Tulp Blues Band and Earth. Their first album, Black Sabbath, 1970, was a landmark, even if critics didn't like it at first. Paranoid came out later that year and was a huge hit, featuring the classic track Iron Man and cementing their place in rock history. Their sound was unique with those deep, distorted guitar riffs and lyrics about darker subjects. Albums like Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and Master of Reality were crucial in shaping the heavy metal genre and inspired countless bands. Ozzy Osbourne left in 1979, but Black Sabbath kept going with different lineups, though Tony Iommi was always there. By 2013, they'd sold over 70 million records worldwide. MTV even called them the greatest metal band ever. Black Sabbath earned plenty of awards, getting into the UK Music Hall of Fame 2005 and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2006. They won 2 Grammys for Best Metal Performance and got a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2019. Their heavy sound still echoes through rock and metal today. ABBA, the famous pop group from Sweden, formed in Stockholm in 1972 and became a global sensation. The name comes from the first letters of the members: Agnetha Faltskog, Björn Ulvaeus, Benny Andersson, and Annie Frid Lyngstad. They were huge from 1974 to 1982 and even had a successful reunion from 2016 to 2022. ABBA really hit the big time in 1974 when they won the Eurovision Song Contest with Waterloo, Sweden's first win. That song was later called the best in Eurovision history. Their catchy tunes and great harmonies topped charts all over the world. Interestingly, the group had 2 married couples, Agnetha and Bjorn and Annie Frid and Benny. As they got more famous, both marriages hit rough patches and eventually ended. You could hear this change in their later, sometimes more thoughtful songs. After they split in 1982, Andersson and Ulvaeus kept writing hit musicals and film scores, while Faltskog and Lyngstad had solo careers. ABBA sold somewhere between 150 million and 385 million records worldwide, making them one of the best-selling groups ever. They were the 3rd biggest single seller in the UK by 2012. In 2020, they got a Brit Billion Award for over 1 billion streams in the UK. Impressively, they were the first group not from an English-speaking country to have consistent success in places like the UK, US, Canada, and Australia. They're the best-selling Swedish band ever and true global pop icons. Which 70s band do you think had the most lasting impact on music history? Lynyrd Skynyrd. Lynyrd Skynyrd, the legendary Southern rock band, started in Jacksonville, Florida, back in 1964 as My Backyard. They settled on the name Lynyrd Skynyrd and their core lineup around 1969, with Ronnie Van Zant singing, Gary Rossington and Alan Collins on guitar, Larry Junstrom on bass, and Bob Burns drumming. By the mid-70s, after their 1973 debut album, the band included Leon Wilkeson on bass, Billy Powell on keyboards, and Ed King on guitar. Their southern rock anthems like Sweet Home Alabama and Free Bird made them huge stars in the 70s. Then, tragedy struck in 1977 when a plane crash killed Ronnie Van Zant, guitarist Steve Gaines, and backup singer Cassie Gaines, and badly injured the others. Despite the heartbreak, Lynyrd Skynyrd regrouped in 1987 for a tour, with Ronnie's brother Johnny Van Zant taking over lead vocals. They kept making music and touring. Rolling Stone named them one of the 100 greatest artists of all time in 2004, and they joined the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006. Even with more loss, like Gary Rossington passing in 2023, Lynyrd Skynyrd remains one of America's great rock bands, having sold over 28 million records just in the US. Their farewell tour started in 2018, though they played shows into 2020. The Carpenters. The Carpenters were the brother-sister duo Karen and Richard Carpenter. Known for their smooth, soft rock sound, Karen's rich voice and Richard's talent for arranging music made them huge in the 1970s. Originally from Connecticut, they moved to California in 1963. Richard focused on piano, and Karen played drums. They started performing together around 1965. They hit it big with a run of hits, including 3 #1 songs. Their gentle, melodic style was a big part of the soft rock sound of the era. They toured constantly in the 70s, but the heavy schedule wore them down. Richard took time off in 1981 for addiction issues, while Karen struggled with anorexia nervosa. Tragically, Karen died in 1983 at just 32 from heart failure related to her eating disorder. Even though their time was cut short, the Carpenters left a lasting mark. They sold over 100 million records and really shaped the soft rock sound. Their music is still loved, and Karen's story sadly brought much-needed attention to eating disorders. The Clash. The Clash was a hugely important English rock band formed in London in 1976, right at the start of British punk rock. Sometimes called the only band that matters, they helped shape post-punk and new wave music. They were known for mixing punk with reggae, dub, funk, ska, and rockabilly. The main guys were Joe Strummer, vocal/rhythm guitar, Mick Jones, lead guitar/vocals, Paul Simon on bass, and Nicky Topper Heaton drums. But troubles like Heaton's drug problems led to him leaving in 1982, and Jones left in 1983. The Clash kept going with new members, but finally broke up in 1986. Their first albums made them big in the UK, but their third album, London Calling, launched them internationally, especially in the US. Rolling Stone even called it the best album of the 1980s. After one more album, Cut the Crap, in 1985, the band split. In 2003, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. ZZ Top. That little old band from Texas, ZZ Top, formed way back in 1969 and spent the early 70s honing their unique brand of bluesy boogie rock. Billy Gibbons on guitar, Dusty Hill on bass, and Frank Beard on drums were the constant lineup, delivering a sound that was raw, greasy, and unmistakably Texan. Albums like Tres Hombres, 1973, which gave us the iconic anthem La Grange, and Fandango, 1975, with a hit Tush, really put them on the map. Their live shows were legendary for their tight musicianship and Gibbons' incredible guitar tone. They weren't just playing the blues. They were adding a hard rock edge and a Texas swagger that was all their own. Throughout the 70s, they built a fiercely loyal following with their consistent groove and down-to-earth image, laying the groundwork before their huge MTV splash in the 80s. Van Halen. When Van Halen dropped their self-titled debut album in 1978, the rock world was completely electrified. Hailing from Pasadena, California, the band featuring brothers Eddie Van Halen on guitar and Alex Van Halen on drums, Michael Anthony on bass, and the charismatic David Lee Roth on vocals, brought something totally fresh. Eddie's revolutionary guitar playing, full of innovative techniques like tapping, sounded like nothing else before. Combined with Roth's high-energy stage presence and swagger, and a rhythm section that was pure power, they were unstoppable. That first album gave us instant classics like Runnin' with the Devil, Ain't Talking About Love, and Eddie's mind-blowing solo Eruption. They quickly followed up with Van Halen 2 in 1979, proving they were no fluke. They injected a much-needed shot of fun, flash, and sheer musical virtuosity into the late 70s rock scene. Creedence Clearwater Revival, CCR. Creedence Clearwater Revival, or CCR, was a really important rock band for California. It featured John Fogerty as lead singer and songwriter, his brother Tom Fogerty on guitar, Stu Cook on bass, and Doug Clifford on drums. They played together since 1959, but officially became CCR in 1967. Between 1969 and 1972, CCR was unstoppable, scoring 14 top 10 singles and 7 top 10 albums in the US. 2 albums, Green River and Cosmo's Factory, hit #1. They were also the first big band to sign up for Woodstock in 1969. Sadly, after just 4 amazing years, the band broke up in 1972. It was a messy split involving disagreements over business and creative control, leading to legal battles. Despite all that, CCR's music is still incredibly popular. John Fogerty continues to perform their hits, and Cook and Clifford later formed a tribute band called Creedence Clearwater Revisited. CCR songs are still all over classic rock radio. Their 1976 Greatest Hits album, Chronicle, has sold over 28 million copies in the US and is still on the charts today, proof of their lasting appeal in rock music. What's your favorite song from the era? Feel free to share in the comments below. Journey. Journey really got going in San Francisco back in 1973, starting out with some former members of Santana, like guitarist Neil Schon and keyboardist Greg Rowley. Their early sound in the mid-70s was more progressive rock and jazz fusion, showcased on albums like their self-titled debut and Look into the Future. While respected musicians, they weren't finding huge commercial success. That all changed dramatically in 1977 when they brought in singer Steve Perry. His powerful, soaring voice shifted their sound towards more melodic, arena-ready rock. This new direction clicked immediately with audiences. Albums like Infinity, 1978, and Evolution, 1979, exploded onto the charts with hits like Will in the Sky and Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin', setting the stage for their massive superstardom in the early 80s. Their 70s evolution was incredible to watch. The Ramones. The Ramones, a groundbreaking punk rock band from New York City, formed in 1974. Many consider them the very first true punk band, and they were key in making punk popular in the US. They weren't huge sellers, but their influence on punk is undeniable. Every member took the last name Ramone, inspired by Paul McCartney's old alias Paul Ramone. These guys played over 2,200 shows in their 22 years, known for their fast, short, high-energy songs that became punk's signature sound. They called it quits after a final show in LA in 1996. Sadly, by 2014, all 4 original members Joey, Dee, Johnny, and Tommy had passed away. Other members like CJ, Marky, Richie, and Elvis Ramone kept playing music. The Ramones are now seen as one of rock's most influential bands. Rolling Stone ranked them 26th among the 100 greatest artists, and Spin magazine put them second only to the Beatles. They got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2002. Badfinger. Badfinger, a rock band from Wales, started strong in the late 60s and was even tipped as the next Beatles. They were the first band signed to the Beatles' Apple Records in 1968. Their catchy power pop gave them worldwide hits like Come and Get It, 1969, No Matter What, 1970, Day After Day, 1971, and Baby Blue, 1972. But even with hit songs, Badfinger struggled with money and legal problems, especially after Apple Records fell apart. These issues really hurt their career. Tragically, singer Pete Ham died by suicide in 1975, and guitarist/bassist Tom Evans did the same in 1983. Drummer Mike Gibbons died in 2005, leaving guitarist Joey Moland as the only surviving member from their classic days. Badfinger's story is one of great talent hit hard by troubles. Earth, Wind, and Fire. If you wanted to feel good and dance in the 70s, Earth, Wind, and Fire was your band. Led by Maurice White, their blend of funk, soul, R&B, jazz, and disco, complete with soaring harmonies and an amazing horn section, was pure joy. Hits like September, Shining Star, and Boogie Wonderland are infectious and uplifting. Their positive energy and incredible live performances were legendary. We absolutely need that kind of joyful, musically rich, get up and dance music back in the mainstream. AC/DC. Formed in Sydney, Australia, in 1973 by brothers Malcolm and Angus Young, AC/DC defined straightforward, high-voltage rock and roll. Their early sound, driven by bluesy riffs and Bon Scott's uniquely gritty and often cheeky vocals, was pure, raw energy. Throughout the 70s, they delivered electrifying albums like High Voltage, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, Let There Be Rock, and Powerage. These records established their signature sound, loud, powerful, and built around unforgettable guitar riffs. Angus Young, in his schoolboy uniform, became an instant icon. They broke through internationally in a huge way with Highway to Hell in 1979, a massive hit that cemented their status as global rock giants just before Scott's tragic death. Their 70s output laid the perfect foundation for their incredible resilience and continued success. Heart, led by the incredibly talented Wilson sisters in vocals and Nancy guitar, Heart burst onto the scene from Seattle in the mid-70s with a sound that powerfully blended hard rock muscle with folk sensibilities. And soaring, operatic vocals were simply stunning, and Nancy's guitar work provided both acoustic elegance and electric crunch. Their 1975 debut album, Dreamboat Annie, was a sensation, featuring massive hits like the dynamic Crazy on You and the haunting Magic Man. They proved female musicians could front a hard-rocking band and achieve huge success. Their follow-up, Little Queen, 1977, delivered another rock radio staple, the driving anthem Barracuda. Heart stood out in the male-dominated rock landscape of the 70s, showcasing exceptional songwriting, musicianship, and proving women could rock just as hard, if not harder. The 80s weren't just about chart topper swery talking about the hidden gems that vanished without a trace. These bands had the sound, the style, and sometimes even the hits but not the staying power. Ready to rediscover the forgotten voices of a legendary decade? Sigue Sigue Sputnik, conceived in 1982 by Tony James, formerly the bassist for Generation X. This band aimed to transcend mere musical performance. Their ambition was to orchestrate a full-blown spectacle. Their striking cyberpunk aesthetic, characterized by vivid neon palettes, metallic attire, and hairstyles defying gravity, formed an integral aspect of their allure, equal to their musical output. By merging components of glam rock, punk ethos, and electronic dance rhythms, they sought to encapsulate the futuristic, defiant spirit reminiscent of a cyberpunk dystopia. Their major breakthrough materialized in 1986 with the release of their inaugural single, Love Missile F1-11, expertly produced by the renowned Giorgio Moroder. The track's innovative fusion of electronic percussion, heavily distorted guitar sounds, and politically suggestive audio samples propelled it to number 3 on the UK singles chart. Nevertheless, despite this initial triumph, the band encountered difficulties in preserving their momentum. Their pronounced reliance on ostentatious marketing tactics such as auctioning advertising space directly on their album sleeves led some critics to question whether their focus skewed more towards image cultivation than artistic substance. As the late 1980s approached, Sigue Sigue Sputnik gradually receded from the mainstream music charts, yet their dedicated cult following persisted. Their discernible influence continues to echo in subsequent electronic and industrial rock movements, demonstrating they undeniably left an enduring imprint on music history. Club Nouveau. Were you aware that a major R&B crossover sensation of the 1980s originated directly from a band's dissolution? Club Nouveau rose phoenix-like from the dissolution of the Timex Social Club, illustrating how conclusions can often pave the way for fresh starts. Following the disbandment of the Timex Social Club, record producer J. King identified a chance for reinvention. In 1986, he established Club Nouveau in Sacramento, California, selecting a name that translates from French as New Club, explicitly signifying renewal. Their inaugural album, Life, Love and Pain, achieved immediate acclaim, propelled significantly by their vibrant, go-go, rhythm-infused rendition of Bill Withers' timeless track, Lean on Me. This interpretation deeply connected with listeners, ascending to the coveted #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100 chart during 1987. Tracks such as Jealousy and Why You Treat Me So Bad also gained considerable notice, with the latter evolving into a frequently sampled piece within the hip-hop and R&B genres, most iconically featured in Lunai's hit, I Got 5 on It. Notwithstanding their initial chart supremacy, Club Nouveau encountered internal reconfigurations, and their subsequent album releases struggled to recapture the initial enchantment. Although their mainstream visibility diminished, their lasting impact, especially through hip-hop sampling culture, has ensured their legacy endures. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Is it conceivable that censorship could inadvertently amplify a song's popularity? This precise scenario unfolded for Frankie Goes to Hollywood with their contentious debut single, Relax. Originating in Liverpool in 1980, the group swiftly captured notice through their audacious sound and deliberately provocative visual presentation. Upon releasing Relax in 1983, its suggestive lyrical content and risque promotional materials ignited public indignation, culminating in the BBC imposing a ban on its radio and television broadcast. However, contrary to suppressing the song's trajectory, this prohibition generated the inverse outcome. Public fascination surged dramatically, propelling Relax straight to the #1 position on the UK singles chart, staying there for 5 consecutive weeks and ultimately exceeding 2 million copies sold. Riding the wave of this unforeseen triumph, the band subsequently issued Two Tribes, an anti-war anthem that similarly claimed the top chart spot, soon followed by The Power of Love, a poignant ballad that secured their 3rd successive #1 single. Their debut album, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, firmly established their significance within 1980s popular culture, expertly blending new wave sensibilities, synth-pop textures, and politically infused themes. By 1987, Holly Johnson had departed to embark on a solo career, precipitating the dissolution of Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Despite their relatively brief duration in the limelight, their lasting impact on both music and wider pop culture remains indisputable. The Waitresses. The Waitresses skillfully carved out a distinctive presence within the early 1980s new wave movement, characterized by their sharp, clever lyrics, unconventional artistic style, and a subtly playful feminist perspective. Originating in Akron, Ohio, during 1978, the band was primarily the conceptual creation of guitarist and principal songwriter Chris Butler. He initially composed their breakthrough hit, I Know What Boys Like, as a satirical commentary on perceived male entitlement. The track, notably featuring Patty Donahue's distinctive deadpan vocal performance, initially became an underground favorite before eventually charting officially in 1982, peaking at #62 on the Billboard Hot 100. Their debut album, Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful, presented an endearingly quirky amalgamation of punk energy, jazz inflections, and pop melodicism, effectively distinguishing them from numerous other bands active during that period. The Waitresses also achieved notable success with Christmas Rapping, a holiday tune that endures as a seasonal staple, celebrated for its witty narrative structure and undeniably catchy rhythmic groove. Despite this promising initial phase, the band encountered difficulties in maintaining forward momentum as internal band tensions began to exert a detrimental influence. Donahue temporarily departed the group, and with the exit of other key personnel, the Waitresses ultimately disbanded in 1984. 20-Flight Rockers. During the mid-1980s, a period largely defined by pop, synthesized sounds, and flamboyant hair metal, a specific band embarked on a mission to resurrect the untamed spirit of foundational rock and roll. Meet 20-Flight Rockers, a London-formed ensemble whose moniker paid homage to Eddie Cochran's 1957 classic, 20-Flight Rock. Established in 1985, their core objective was to channel the defiant energy of 1950s rock into the contemporary era, infusing it with a distinct punk rock sensibility that differentiated them sharply from their musical peers. Guided by the compelling presence of frontman Gary Twin, alongside Mark Laff managing the drums, Ian McKillop handling guitar duties, and Jeff Vine anchoring the bass, their musical output masterfully blended vintage rockabilly guitar patterns with punk's raw attitude and drive, forging a sound simultaneously nostalgic and strikingly modern. They successfully cultivated a dedicated underground following, their electrifying live performances establishing them as an essential act to witness. Yet, despite this burgeoning fan base, widespread mainstream recognition persistently eluded them. The group independently produced an album titled Ride, intended for a 1988 release. Unfortunately, complications with their record label prevented its distribution, delivering a decisive setback to the band's momentum. Lacking a significant breakthrough, 20-Flight Rockers ultimately dissolved, marking them as one of the numerous undiscovered treasures within the annals of 80s rock music history. The Trash Sinatras. Hailing from Irvine, this Scottish indie pop collective took shape in 1986, initially cutting their teeth performing cover versions in neighborhood pubs. Their distinctive name allegedly originated from classroom activity where students improvised instruments, incorporating trash cans, which led to a witty comparison with Frank Sinatra. Gradually, they cultivated their unique songwriting voice, characterized by a fusion of bright, jangly guitar melodies and thoughtfully crafted, poetic lyrical content. Their significant advancement occurred with the unveiling of their 1990 debut album, Cake, which prominently featured the notable track, Obscurity Knocks. This particular song resonated with listeners on both sides of the Atlantic, garnering critical acclaim for the band. Nevertheless, despite this encouraging beginning, they faced obstacles in attaining broad commercial triumph. The 1990s witnessed the release of further albums, such as I've Seen Everything, 1993, and A Happy Pocket, 1996. Yet persistent financial constraints and significant shifts within the music industry landscape presented considerable challenges to sustaining their musical career. Despite these hardships, their devoted following remained unwavering, and the band pressed on, eventually releasing Weightlifting in 2004 and In the Music in 2009. Their steadfast commitment to their artistic craft ultimately solidified their position as cherished cult figures within the indie music sphere. The Replacements. Forged in Minneapolis during 1979, this group initially comprised Paul Westerberg handling vocals and guitar, Bob Stinson on guitar, Tommy Stinson playing bass, and Chris Mars keeping time on drums. While their origins were firmly planted in punk rock, their musical approach progressively broadened, integrating elements of rock, folk traditions, and pop sensibilities, which distinctly separated them from many contemporaries. By the middle of the 1980s, the Replacements had cultivated a notorious reputation for their unrestrained, often alcohol-infused live performances, frequently oscillating between moments of sheer musical genius and utter chaos. Their 1984 album, Let It Be, signaled a pivotal evolution, as Westerberg's burgeoning songwriting prowess prominently emerged on tracks like the iconic I Will Dare and the rawly emotional Unsatisfied. Although widely lauded by critics as a seminal work, the band persistently remained somewhat marginalized within the mainstream music establishment. Their inaugural major label effort, Tim, 1985, achieved recognition, yet escalating internal friction led to the departure of Bob Stinson in 1986. Despite garnering continued critical praise, subsequent albums, including Pleased to Meet Me, 1987, and Don't Tell a Soul, 1989, ultimately failed to catapult them into widespread popular stardom. By the time they issued All Shook Down in 1990, the band's internal cohesion was fraying, leading to their official disbandment in 1991. The Replacements endure as one of the most profoundly influential alternative rock bands of their specific era. The Outfield. Envision a musical act hailing from Britain that dominated American radio charts, while remaining relatively obscure within their native land. This portrays the distinctive narrative of the Outfield, a London-based trio that achieved enormous success across the Atlantic, yet found widespread recognition challenging back home. Established in 1984, the band comprised vocalist and bassist Tony Lewis, guitarist John Spinks, and drummer Alan Jackman. Their signature sound, a compelling fusion of stadium rock dynamism and polished pop hooks, proved exceptionally successful with their 1985 debut album, Play Deep. The record's standout single, Your Love, swiftly attained classic status, climbing to number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and embedding itself firmly within the fabric of American popular culture. From pervasive radio airplay to echoing through sports arenas, the track's instantly recognizable opening guitar riff and sentimentally charged lyrics solidified it as an anthem characteristic of the period. Despite this significant American acclaim, the band never attained a comparable level of renown within the United Kingdom. Their 1987 follow-up album, Bangin', did yield the top 40 hit Since You've Been Gone, yet they were unable to fully replicate their earlier phenomenal success. They persisted in creating music well into the 1990s, although their forward impetus gradually diminished. Tragedy befell the group in 2014 when John Spinks succumbed to liver cancer, prompting the band's formal dissolution. Tony Lewis subsequently launched a solo venture, releasing an album in 2018, but sadly passed away in 2020, signifying the conclusion of the Outfield's extraordinary journey. Rip Rig Plus Panic. Taking their name from a 1965 Roland Kirk jazz album, this band originated in Bristol in 1980, uniting a collective of exceptionally experimental musicians. The ensemble showcased Sean Oliver on bass, Mark Springer handling piano, saxophone, and vocal duties, Gareth Sager contributing guitar, saxophone, and keyboards, Bruce Smith playing drums and percussion, and the compelling Nene Cherry providing vocals, who would later achieve considerable solo stardom. Their inaugural 1981 album, God, instantly distinguished them with its untamed energy, non-traditional song arrangements, and uninhibited improvisational flair. Despite their audacious experimentation and positive reception from critics, widespread commercial popularity proved elusive for the group. By 1983, Rip Rig Plus Panic had ceased operations, although its members continued their musical pursuits actively. Nene Cherry embarked on a highly successful solo career, marked by hits like Buffalo Stance, while other members engaged in diverse musical endeavors. The Men They Couldn't Hang. The men they couldn't hang skillfully occupied a unique niche within the musical landscape by masterfully merging punk's unrefined vitality with the narrative depth characteristic of folk music traditions. Established in London during 1984, the band swiftly garnered recognition for their fervent, socially aware lyrics coupled with invigorating, memorable melodies. Their significant breakthrough arrived via their impassioned rendition of The Green Fields of France, an anti-war ballad originally penned by Eric Bogle. By injecting a potent dose of punk intensity into this deeply moving folk composition, they crafted a definitive signature track that struck a powerful chord with listeners. The founding lineup featured Stephen Cush, vocals, guitar, Philip Swill Odgers, vocals, guitar, John Odgers, drums, percussion, Paul Simmons, guitar, bouzouki, keyboards, and Shane Bradley, bass guitar. Their early work helped define the folk punk genre. The band consistently released albums throughout the latter part of the 1980s, presenting politically charged songs that tackled significant themes including warfare, class disparities, and broader social injustices. Although they never attained substantial mainstream chart success, the men they couldn't hang cultivated an intensely loyal following, largely attributable to their tireless touring schedule and authentically raw sound. They initially disbanded in 1991, but subsequently reunited in 1996, demonstrating their persistent appeal. Their music has consistently served as a resonant voice for audiences drawn equally to punk's rebellious spirit and folk music's rich storytelling heritage. Lip Sync. Lip Sync achieved widespread recognition in 1980 courtesy of their international disco smash Funky Town, a composition that perfectly encapsulated the era's spirit through its irresistible rhythm and forward-thinking synthesizer textures. The project was initiated in Minneapolis during 1979 by producer, songwriter, and versatile instrumentalist Stephen Greenberg, who conceived it as a studio-centric endeavor featuring a fluid roster of musicians. The group's most distinct voice belonged to Cynthia Johnson, contributing both star quality and vocal prowess to their distinctive sound. Their initial album, Mouth to Mouth, saw release in 1979, yet it was the single Funky Town that catapulted them to global stardom the subsequent year. The song utterly dominated music charts worldwide, achieving the #1 position in an impressive 28 countries, including the United States, where it reigned atop the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 weeks. It rapidly became a defining anthem of the disco movement, largely due to its insistent beat, distinctive robotic vocal treatments, and highly memorable lyrics expressing a yearning for urban excitement. Despite the extraordinary triumph of Funky Town, Lip Sync found it challenging to sustain that same pinnacle of popularity. Subsequent musical releases failed to generate comparable impact, and as the disco era gradually waned, so too did the group's prominence. By 1985, Lip Sync had officially disbanded, leaving behind the enduring legacy of a quintessential one-hit wonder that continues to connect with dance music enthusiasts globally. Funky Town persists as a timeless classic, frequently licensed for films, commercials, and remains a staple on dance floors. Animotion. Animotion carved their niche within the mid-80s new wave landscape, yet their most significant hit track possessed origins elsewhere. The pulsating synth-pop juggernaut Obsession, a staple of the airwaves, was penned initially by Michael Desbars and Holly Knight. However, once Animotion adopted the song, they meticulously reshaped it into an emblematic anthem representing the decade. Emerging in 1983 from the creative embers of a science fiction-themed outfit named Red Zone, this Los Angeles collective rapidly found its rhythm amidst the expanding synth-pop phenomenon. Their charged interpretation of Obsession ascended the charts dramatically, achieving the number 6 position on the US Billboard Hot 100 and peaking at number 5 across the UK by 1985. Capitalizing on this surge, they released Let Him Go, which similarly secured placement within the US Top 40 rankings. Nevertheless, just as their prominence intensified, internal discord prompted substantial lineup alterations. By the time their third album surfaced, merely 2 original members were still involved, and although their 1989 single Room to Move garnered some radio play, it proved insufficient to sustain the band's trajectory. Following years of separation, Animotion delighted followers with a reunion performance in 2001, playing to a capacity crowd in Portland, Oregon. Band of Susans. Band of Susans emerged as one of the most unique entities within the late 80s and early 90s alternative rock milieu, celebrated for their intricate, immersive guitar textures and avant-garde musical sensibilities. Conceptualized in New York City during 1986, the group was co-founded by Robert Poss, guitar, vocals, and Susan Stenger, bass vocals. Joining them were 3 additional guitarists, remarkably including 2 others also named Susan: Susan Tallman and Susan Lyle, with and Husak completing the initial formation on drums. Their debut extended play, Blessing and Curse, 1987, served as an introduction to their trademark sonic approach, a dense tapestry woven from feedback-rich guitars, starkly minimalist rhythmic foundations, and mesmerizingly repetitive musical phrases. This distinctive style underwent further development on their first full-length album, Hope Against Hope, 1988, which firmly established their reputation within the noise rock and experimental rock communities. Throughout their existence, the band experienced numerous personnel shifts. Despite receiving consistent critical commendation for their subsequent albums, including notable releases like Love Agenda, 1989, and The Word and the Flesh, 1991, widespread mainstream success remained perpetually out of reach. Band of Susans maintained their status as a cherished cult favorite throughout their decade-long operational span before ultimately disbanding in 1996, bequeathing a lasting legacy characterized by complex, guitar-centric musical innovation. Kajagoogoo. Have you ever pondered how a group bearing a nonsensical moniker ascended to become a premier pop phenomenon of the early 1980s? This encapsulates the trajectory of Kajagoogoo, the ensemble responsible for the monumental 1983 hit Too Shy. Initially formed in Leighton Buzzard, England, back in 1978 under the name Art Nouveau, the band explored a blend of new wave aesthetics and synth-pop elements. Their pivotal moment arrived, however, only after they rebranded themselves as Kajagoogoo, a name purportedly derived from infantile babble which coincided with their breakthrough into the mainstream. Their significant opportunity materialized upon adding the magnetic frontman Limahl to their configuration. Possessing a unique visual presentation and flair, Too Shy surged dramatically to the #1 spot on the UK singles chart and also scaled the Billboard Hot 100's top 5 in the US, instantly catapulting them to stardom. Yet, this peak success proved ephemeral. Internal disagreements precipitated Limahl's exit later that very same year, and although the remaining members pressed forward with singles like Big Apple and The Lion's Mouth, they faced challenges in sustaining their chart presence. By the year 1985, Kajagoogoo had ceased operations. They briefly reconvened during the early 2000s, even issuing new musical material, but the initial spark never entirely rekindled. Vixen. Vixen decisively broke through barriers, emerging as one of the very few all-female glam metal bands to attain significant mainstream success during the vibrant 1980s rock scene. Originally founded in 1980 by guitarist Jan Kanemund in St. Paul, Minnesota, the band persistently vied for recognition within a musical genre overwhelmingly dominated by male artists. Their pivotal breakthrough arrived in 1988 with the release of their self-titled debut album, which yielded the powerful, anthemic hits Edge of a Broken Heart and Crying. Both singles received extensive airplay on MTV and successfully climbed the Billboard Hot 100 chart, firmly establishing their position within rock music history. The iconic lineup consisted of Janet Gardner delivering lead vocals and playing rhythm guitar, Cher Ross anchoring the band on bass, and Roxy Petrucci driving the rhythm section on drums. Together, they formed a formidable group that emphatically demonstrated women could rock with the same intensity and skill as their male contemporaries. Their sophomore album, Rev It Up 1990, sustained their momentum, peaking at No. 52 on the Billboard 200 chart. However, the rise of the grunge movement in the early 1990s precipitated a decline in glam metal's overall popularity, leading Vixen to disband in 1992. They later reunited during the late 1990s and again in the 2000s, although internal conflicts and various lineup changes hindered a complete resurgence. Till Tuesday forcefully entered the music landscape in the mid-1980s, propelled by their iconic hit, Voices Carry, a memorably haunting synth-pop anthem that deeply connected with audiences and solidified itself as a defining track of the decade. Established in Boston during 1982, the band comprised Amy Mann, lead vocals, bass guitar, Robert Holmes, guitar, Joey Pesci, keyboards, and Michael Hausman, drums. Their unique, atmospheric sound, skillfully weaving together new wave sensibilities with rock undertones, rapidly distinguished them from their contemporaries. Released to the public in 1985, Voices Carry dramatically ascended to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Its success was significantly amplified by its visually arresting music video, which powerfully depicted the dynamics of an emotionally manipulative relationship. Drawing inspiration from Mann's own personal experiences, the song's palpable raw emotion and soaring, unforgettable chorus struck a profound chord with listeners worldwide. Despite achieving this significant breakthrough, Till Tuesday faced challenges in sustaining that initial level of commercial triumph. Their subsequent albums, Welcome Home, 1986, and Everything's Different Now, 1988, effectively showcased Mann's evolving, increasingly introspective songwriting talents, but did not generate comparable major hit singles. Ultimately, internal band tensions and shifts in creative direction led to their official disbandment in 1989. Very few music videos can claim the kind of transformative cultural power wielded by a-ha's Take On Me. This Norwegian synth-pop trio, established in Oslo during 1982, featured Morten Harket providing lead vocals, Magne Furuholmen contributing on keyboards, and Paul Wachtore-Savoy playing guitar. Although the band had dedicated several years to honing their distinctive sound, their definitive breakthrough arrived in 1985, coinciding with the release of Take On Me. The song's phenomenal success was significantly fueled by its revolutionary music video, which ingeniously merged live-action footage with an extraordinary pencil sketch animation style, known as rotoscoping. This captivating visual narrative seized the imagination of audiences globally, driving the single to the pinnacle of the Billboard Hot 100 chart within the United States and firmly enshrining it as an enduring pop classic. The group's debut album, Hunting High and Low, further cemented their artistic standing. while ABBA encountered challenges sustaining their chart dominance in the US. During subsequent years, they continued to enjoy immense popularity throughout Europe, maintaining a consistent output of music across the 1990s and 2000s. Following a temporary pause starting in 2010, they reconvened in 2015, effectively demonstrating their resilience and persistent appeal to a dedicated global fan base. The sound. The sound stands as one of the post-punk era's most significantly underappreciated acts, consistently lauded by music critics, yet predominantly overlooked by the broader mainstream audience. Established in South London in 1979, the group emerged from the remnants of the Outsiders, a punk ensemble previously fronted by Adrian Borland. Featuring Borland on lead vocals and guitar, complemented by Graham Bailey, bass, Michael Dudley, drums, and Colin Max Mayer's keyboards, the sound cultivated a profoundly atmospheric and emotionally charged sonic identity that clearly distinguished them. Their 1980 debut album, Jeopardy, garnered widespread critical acclaim upon release, presenting dark, introspective lyrical themes and an urgent, visceral energy. However, despite the positive critical reception, the album failed to make a substantial impact commercially. The subsequent release, From the Lion's Mouth, 1981, demonstrated a more refined production quality and sophisticated poetic lyricism, yet it similarly struggled to connect with a larger listening public. Throughout the 1980s, they continued releasing several albums, but a persistent lack of mainstream acknowledgement, difficulties with record labels, and Adrian Borland's challenging, ongoing struggles with mental health inevitably took their toll. Tragically, in 1999, Borland died by suicide, leaving behind an enduring legacy of haunting, largely neglected post-punk brilliance. Visage. Established in London back in 1978, this group was prominently led by the charismatic and visually striking frontman Steve Strange, collaborating closely with Rusty Egan, drums, and Midge Ure, synthesizers guitar. They effectively brought together a potent combination of synthesizer-driven soundscapes and post-punk dynamism. Their 1980 self-titled debut album unveiled Fade to Gray to the world, a profoundly atmospheric composition that rapidly became an emblematic anthem of the early 1980s. Skillfully blending cool, detached synthesizers with evocative multilingual vocals and complemented by a chic, avant-garde music video, the song perfectly captured the zeitgeist of the burgeoning new romantic movement, reaching No. 8 in the UK. The band's distinct and influential visual identity, significantly shaped by Strange's prominent roles as both a fashion trendsetter and influential club promoter, cemented their status as pioneering figures within this cultural shift. Notwithstanding their initial triumphs, internal friction within the band, coupled with evolving musical preferences, ultimately led to Midge Ure's departure, significantly diminishing Visage's central creative force. Their subsequent album releases, The Anvil, 1982, and Beat Boy, 1984, failed to attain the same level of impact as their debut, and the band formally dissolved in 1985. Steve Strange later initiated various attempts at reviving the project prior to his passing in 2015, leaving behind a significant and enduring legacy within synth-pop history. Johnny Hates Jazz. Johnny Hates Jazz surfaced in the mid-1980s, offering a refined pop aesthetic that expertly merged sophisticated melodic structures with thoughtful, introspective lyrical content. Formed in London during 1985, the core of the band consisted of Clark Datchler, handling vocals, keyboards, and primary songwriting duties, and Mike Nocito, contributing guitar, bass, and production expertise. Their distinctive name, originating from an inside joke concerning a friend's aversion to jazz music, helped them stand out within the densely populated pop music scene of the era. Their definitive breakthrough single, Shattered Dreams, issued in 1987, evolved into a truly international phenomenon. It climbed into the top 5 rankings in the United Kingdom, secured the number 2 spot in Japan, and reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in the United States. The track's impeccably polished production values and its melancholic yet undeniably infectious melody firmly established it as a quintessential song representative of that specific period. Their debut album, Turn Back the Clock, 1988, further cemented their position within the late 80s pop landscape. However, precisely as the band was building significant momentum, Datchler departed in 1988 owing to internal disagreements, dealing a considerable setback to their ongoing trajectory. With Phil Thornalley assuming vocal duties, they released Tall Stories in 1991, but this effort failed to recapture their previous level of success. Johnny Hates Jazz left an indelible impression on 80s pop with their characteristically polished, highly radio-friendly sound. That's our journey through the unforgettable sounds and lost treasures of the 70s and 80s. From stadium giants to cult classics, these bands left their mark. What are your favorite anthems from these decades? Which forgotten band do you think deserves a comeback? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more musical deep dives.